kids. They're not your kids. And God help any you might have.
Oh, get out of here. Go on, you nosy bitch. Just get out of here.
There's nothing wrong with your pacemaker. Oh, damn. There's no getting away from these things, not even in the loo. Excuse me a moment, I won't be a second. Yes? What? Say that again, I can't hear you. Yes, well, look, I'm pretty tied up at the moment. Could you ask Dr. Morris to have a look there? Oh, yes, of course. I forgot it was his morning for the clinic. Look, it doesn't sound too serious. Just keep an eye on her, and I'll be there as soon as possible, all right? Yes, well, I'm doing an ECG at the moment, so it shouldn't be too long. Yeah, right, thanks. Goodbye.
I did warn you, Mrs. Davidson, and Mr. Fletcher. She was just faking that heart attack so she could escape.
The tests are not complete. As far as the doctor can ascertain, she was not faking.
She certainly made a quick recovery.
The dryers temporarily affected the pacemaker.
She's been working there for days.
I am not a heart specialist, Miss Bennet, nor do I believe are you. I'm merely telling you what I have been told. If Bryant were too close to the dryers, the electrical activity could quite easily slow down the pacemaker.
You said temporarily.
As soon as she moved away from the source of interference, it returned to normal.
I wouldn't put it past her if she knew that all along. Some of these women would do anything to get out of here.
Unfortunately, that will not help the police to find her, and there's nothing in the file to suggest where she might go.
Well, it is possible she could be trying to get back to America.
But she's been in Australia for 20 years.
But there is a reason why she'd want to go back. I may be wrong, mind you, but she's had a letter telling her her father's dying.
How did you find that out?
Well, I sensed the mail. I asked Paul to have a word with her. Naturally, he told her that compassionate leave was out of the question.
When did this happen?
Day before yesterday?
Why was I not informed?
Well, there didn't seem to be any need. I mean, Judy accepted it. We got the impression that although she was fond of her father, she hadn't heard from him since she left.
Is there anything else you've forgotten to tell me?
Mrs. Davidson, we didn't deliberately set out to keep anything from you.
I suggest you go through Bryant's records again, just to be on the safe side.
I'm sure if there had been something there,
I would be happier if you double-checked, Mrs. Jackson. Then, as you are supposed to be off duty, I suggest you go home.
Wouldn't you think she'd have learnt by now not to take those women at face value? She and Paul Reed are two of a kind. Always very quick to take the side of the inmates against the system. I mean, you only had to look at what he did yesterday. If I hadn't been in his office, Doreen Burns could have been arranging anything with that husband of hers, and he wouldn't have lifted a finger to stop her.
A slight exaggeration, wouldn't you say, Miss Bennet?
I'm merely making a point. Or are you going to ignore Burns's behavior as well?
No, I am not. And will you please stop trying to tell me how to do my job?
Kevin really needs the work, Bea. I only rang him to tell him to make a lower offer on that delivery contract.
Yeah, well, so you keep telling me. You just had to make it in front of Vera, didn't you?
I said I was sorry.
Well, why on earth didn't you tell me instead of going off half-cocked?
Yeah, if you've buggered it up for the rest of us, you're going to
Well,
be...
it isn't Queen Solomon. But then you've had a lot of experience in the botching up department, haven't you? So until you can actually get something right for a change, just belt up. Now, let's get a few things straight. This work program is for all of us. So if one of you gets it stopped because you can't think of anyone else but yourself, I'll be waiting for you. Hey, Burke. You missed one.
That's not bloody well fair. I have to wash them. Oh, give it to me, you clumsy drongo.
About time. Where have you two been? Picking up the laundry in Sydney.
We've just been in the nursery. We saw Chrissy's little kid. Oh, you should see her. She's grown that much. A real little sweetheart. And Chrissy treats her just like a real princess. I never saw such a change in anybody.
Yeah, it's funny, isn't it? Get a woman in here for murder. All she cares about is looking after her kid. And you get another one who doesn't even know what the word mother means.
Yeah. What rotten man's gonna bash a little kid?
Yeah, I never laid in any of mine unless they asked for it. And I never set out to hurt them.
They take your kids away from you because they say you're a crim and they reckon you can't look after them properly. And they really ought to take them away from the bash artists, who should never have had them in the first place.
Most women would kill to protect their kids. Must take a real sickie to lay into a 3-year-old.
They ought to be put out of their misery.
Cats never leave their kittens.
I think scum like that would do the world a favour. Put an end to themselves. Save someone else having to do it for them.
Mrs. Jackson, what are you still doing here?
I wanted to talk to Paul Reed about Gail Summers. I didn't think it could wait.
May I ask what it's about?
The woman who's supposed to be looking after Gail's children isn't fit to be near them. Thank heavens Child Welfare has stepped in and taken them away. I thought Paul should know so that he could tell Gail as soon as possible.
I see. I take it you've been associating with an inmate's family.
Well, they do live next door to me. I took it for granted you knew. I was the one who reported the child abuse in the first place, although I assumed it was the father and not Gail.
You and Mr. Reed have been taking a great deal on your shoulders lately.
Mrs. Davidson, Mr. Reed is a social worker. He is supposed to handle the women's personal problems in here and outside.
A little more of the social worker and less of the solitary worker, and we may avoid a lot of unnecessary trouble. In future, I want any information about an inmate to come directly to my office. I want reports from all the staff to be on my desk no later than 5 o'clock every afternoon. If there is anyone who does not like the way I run Wentworth, then they can apply for a transfer, and I shall be only too happy to endorse it.
Hello.
Judy! G'day. I mean, oh, hell. How are you? When did they let you out? You what? Oh, no, nothing yet. Not that I've heard.
Yeah, listen, honey, you remember that stuff that I left at your place, is it still there? Great. I'm probably a huge pain in the neck, but I'm wondering if you could somehow get it to me.
Sure, yeah, okay, but, where are you going to go, for crying out loud? Jude, you can't just wander the streets. Look, Pete's away on a business trip for a couple of days. Look, why don't you come and stay over here? Just till you get yourself together.
That's fantastic. No, that's really fantastic. Well, look, I'm in Wallace Street, you know? Will you pick me up? Oh, and listen, if you see someone in a policewoman's uniform, it's me.
What? Phew. You've got more guts than I have. Okay, Judy. See you soon.
Okay, bye.
feet, Summers. You're wanted in Mr. Reed's office. That wasn't a request, it was an order. Now move.
There's no need for me to see Mr. Reed. I'm not going to fight Tim for the kids. They'll be better off with him.
Well, it took you long enough to realise that. You're not in here for the good of your health.
Realise it? Don't you think I knew every time I hit him that I was hurting someone I loved?
If you must know, neither one of you are fit parents. In fact, your children have been made wards of the state. They were put in a home this morning.
Miss Bennett, may I see you, please? I'll explain in a minute, Gail. You couldn't wait to tell her, could you? And what could you possibly hope to achieve, apart from delighting in sending her over the edge?
She wouldn't see Paul Reed. Somebody had to tell her.
There are other ways.
And what are you doing here anyway? You shouldn't be wandering around the prison out of uniform.
If you mention one more regulation to me, Vera, I promise I'll have no hesitation in reporting you for mental cruelty toward an inmate.
You should have a good look at yourself once in a while, Meg. For instance, why do you care so much about her feelings? Maybe it's because you feel guilty at having put her in prison in the first place and then her children in a home. But that's your problem. So don't go around taking your guilt out on me.
You have been in and out of trouble ever since you were allowed on work release. Now, for some unknown reason, you want to get out of it. How can you expect me to be fair if you will not tell me why?
There's nothing to tell, Mrs. Davidson.
How did you find out about the delivery contract?
I just heard about it, that's all.
All right, Doreen, you've had enough chances. Yes. As of now, you are no longer permitted to work at the factory.
Yes, Mrs. Davidson.
Maybe you wouldn't be so happy if the program was cancelled altogether, Burns.
Oh, crikey, Mrs. Davidson. The others had nothing to do with it. You can't punish them for something I did.
No, and I have no intention of allowing the matter to rest there. I am going to ring Mr. Reynolds and advise him not to accept any offer made by your husband, no matter how much it undercuts the others.
It was a matter of neglect, Gail. We tried contacting Tim, and when we couldn't reach him at work, we waited until he came home. For welfare were going to suggest a reliable woman, but he wouldn't listen. He was drunk and abusive, and they had no choice but to take the children away. Now they'll be properly looked after until the outcome of your trial. And when the custody hearing comes up, you'll have a much better chance now of winning the case.
No. I couldn't stop myself when Tim was there. What'll I be like without him? And who'll look after us?
Look, there'll be people to help you.
Oh, look, you were the one that got me arrested. You knew I shouldn't be near him. Now you're telling me you can see me back there looking after him?
Look, Gail, with time and help...
Oh, no, look, say I do get him back. Well, is someone going to watch me 24 hours a day? Well, they better, because I wouldn't trust myself alone with them ever again. I couldn't bear it. I used to pretend he was just clumsy. Well, that's what I told you. Seeing them bruises, knowing I did it. Well, in the end, I started believing that he really was just clumsy myself. But then he'd start screaming, and the baby'd start up, and Katrina would want something, and Tim would be screaming at me to shut them all up. No matter what I did, nothing worked. Pick him up, he'd want to be put down. Put him down, he'd want to be picked up. All I wanted was a minute to myself. Why wouldn't he stop crying? I just wanted to do anything just to make him stop crying. I'm so afraid I'll do it again.
She didn't have to take it out on Kevin, the old battle axe.
Yeah, it's tough. But you brought it on yourself.
Don't worry, Dor. Kev will get something else. And at least she didn't stop us from going.
Yeah, but I went through all that for nothing.
Went through all what?
Oh, you know, getting stopped from working, everything.
Now, would you like to try something I might believe?
Come on, Dor. You can tell us. We're your mates.
Why don't you tell them about the story?
Shut up.
Why don't you rack off, big ears?
Bit of the old how's your father, eh, Dor?
What's she on about?
Oh, Vince Talbot, he's the foreman. He took a fancy to me. He said if I didn't go along with him, well, he'd report me for stealing and have the work release stopped.
It's a rotten mongrel. God, if he tried an old trick like that on me, I would have given him what for.
Well, I told Judy, and she used to go to the storeroom with him instead of me, but he never tried anything on her. Then I wanted Kevin to get that job real bad. So I had to do what he wanted.
Oh, why on earth didn't you tell me?
Well, what could you do? You were in here.
Well, you're not going to let him get away with that, are you, Bee?
Well, we're going to have to replace Doreen. I'll just make sure it's with me. And this creep wants to play rough. We'll see if he could do with a few lessons from an expert.
You'd be the last on the list. Only way you'd get out of here is if everybody got sick or died or something.
This could be arranged.
At the moment, you're under a lot of pressure. Apart from being in prison, there are the problems at home and... Well, the women here don't like... Or more to the point, don't understand anything about child abuse. And mostly their lack of understanding is exaggerated by the fact that they're cut off from their own children. Oh, Gail, you've got to stop hating yourself.
The what I did?
But you were under a lot of pressure from home, and once you admit that, it'll be easier to do something about it.
That's why we want you to think about joining Parents Anonymous. They're a specialised self-help group for parents who have abused their children or who are afraid they might.
Yeah, but why are you here? I mean, why can't Mr. Reed handle this?
Well, Mr. Reed is very busy. And since this is an area that Captain Barton is expert in, Mrs. Davidson thought... Well, the point is, you've got to get help, and these people can help you.
One of the things that they stress, Gail, is that criticism only makes you feel more of a failure, which in turn can lead to further abuse.
Do you mean there's people that really understand?
Of course there are. Now, with this group, you only need to use your Christian name if you like. There are no costs involved, and there's a 24-hour counselling service. And they can also help with things like marriage guidance, legal advice, home help. And there are volunteers on hand to help you with the children if you feel you're reaching a crisis situation.
Now, it'll help at your trial if you say you're joining Parents Anonymous. And more important, it'll help you get custody of the children.
Yeah, but how come everyone else can handle it okay?
Don't you believe it. There are far too many people too quick to say, I can cope. Mrs. Next Door has no problems with her children, therefore she'll think I'm hopeless if I say I have, so I won't admit it. And you end up bottling everything up inside you and suddenly exploding. Now, why should anyone feel ashamed or guilty to say they need help?
Here, we can both use this.
Oh, great.
Oh, you'll never get out of the country on an expired passport.
Yeah, well, I've been given the name of a forger by one of the girls inside.
You know, I could never set myself up to be sent to prison, no matter how much I cared about anybody. But then you always were different. Jude, try taking anything out of the bank and they'll grab you.
Yeah, I know. But I'll think of something.
Listen, I can let you have a bit. Well, not much, because most of our money's going into making this mess.
You're someone very special. Did you know that?
Of course I do. You're really set on going back to the States? Oh, look, I'm sorry that letter from your dad took so long arriving, but it was sent to 2 addresses before I finally got it and passed it on to you.
Yeah, well, I've got to go back, you see. My dad wants to see me.
Hi, Meg.
Tony, where have you been? Your father's worried sick.
Well, yeah, but I didn't want to tell him where I was going in case he tried to talk me out of it.
There's always the telephone.
Yeah, I know, but I didn't have time. Spent most of the last 2 days hitchhiking to Adelaide and back.
Adelaide?
Yeah, for a job. And I got it.
Marvellous. Congratulations.
Thanks. Actually, it's not just a job, it's a partnership. It depends on Dad coming good with the money.
Well, what sort of business is it?
It's a garage.
Oh, that's a tough one these days, especially the way oil prices are going.
Yeah, I know, but I'm sure we can make it work. It's better than being on the dole.
Of course it is. Good luck.
Thanks. You don't think Dad'll be too upset to see me?
No, he'll be relieved to see you. He's really been worried.
It's becoming quite the family day.
Does it bother you?
Well, just as long as Paul Reed finds time to put in his report on Gail Summers.
Oh, you must read it, Vera. You'll be pleased to see we've accomplished quite a lot.
Oh, you're not an authority on child abuse cases. That girl's sick. What she needs is a good psychiatrist.
What she needs is support and understanding.
Oh, next you'll be saying she wasn't to blame. It was all the children's fault.
Look, it's a combination of a lot of things. But making her feel guilty only adds to the problems.
Well, I don't know why people bother having children if they can't look after them.
You only ever see everything in black and white, don't you, Vera? And perhaps you're not to blame either. Parents have a lot to answer for in some cases.
What do you mean?
Oh, I'm sorry. Forget I ever mentioned it.
There was nothing wrong with my childhood. My mother was strict, but what's wrong with that? If I hadn't respected her, I wouldn't have looked after her all those years.
I'm talking about when you were a child. She was strict, all right. Wouldn't let you have any pets, wouldn't let you study painting, which you loved. But it goes deeper than that, Vera. She never said a nice word to you. It was always how plain you were, clumsy, how badly you were doing at school. Well, that's what you told me. She even made you feel guilty about your father walking out on you. Now, that's what I call mental abuse of a child, which can be just as damaging as physical abuse. I'm sorry, but I would have thought you, of all people, would have a little more understanding about what Gail's going through.
Well, that's the last time I tell you anything. And come to think of it, if your childhood was so wonderful, why don't you ever talk about it?
This G thing must be a real worry to you, Mrs. Davidson.
Oh, she'll be found.
Yeah, they never get away. I don't know why they want to get out in the first place. Funny she never mentioned anything about running off, though. I mean, you'd thought she'd have said something. We were mates. Closed book, that one.
Oh, do hurry up.
We've just finished, Mrs. Davidson.
These came for you.
Oh, just put them on the desk, would you, Miss Bennett?
Have you decided who's taking Burns's place?
Yes, I'll speak to some of the women before I leave. Could you wait outside until I've finished in here?
Hi. Well, that was a quick visit.
Yeah.
I returned to see how you went. Was Paul pleased to see you?
Yeah, he was at first. Then I told him about the money. He'd thought I'd asked him for an arm or a leg or something.
Well, as I said, it's a risky business.
Well, yeah, I know, but I'm sure we can make a go of it. The least he could have done was give us a chance.
Well, maybe he will. Just give him time to think about it.
I doubt it.
Just give him time. And come on, I'm finished for the day. I'll see you out.
I've got it. I've never had to read so fast in my life.
Well, who is it?
Fellas.
Oh, fan-bloody-tastic!
Don't get excited. You're not going, remember?
Oh, yeah. What do I have to do?
Maybe you can do 2 good deeds at once.
Your attention, please. Most of you want the work release program to be a success. However, there is always the occasional person who abuses the privilege. There has been one such instance already. I trust it will be the last. Should there be any more trouble at the factory, I will not hesitate to cancel the scheme.
Why don't you stay in your cell?
You keep coming in here. I'm sick of this song.
Let go of her, Smith.
Now you know what it feels like. I was going to allow you to work at the factory tomorrow, Hunt, but you certainly lost any chance of that. Are you hurt?
On your feet. You'll be safer in your cell.
I think 24 hours locked in their cells wouldn't do these two any harm, Miss Bennett.
Yes, Mrs. Davidson.
This isn't going to make any difference to the others, is it, Mrs. Davidson? I mean, there are some women here who can be trusted. We all want this program to work, you know.
If I'd known I was
You've
going to
had
be...
your chance, Hunt.
For once, Smith, you've proven that you can be responsible if you want to be. Perhaps you would like the opportunity of showing us you can be trusted.
Mrs. Davidson.
I want Smith to set an example to the women. She's to be allowed on work release tomorrow.
You can count on me, Mrs. Davidson.
Got a light? What's the matter with you? Haven't you ever seen anyone light a match before?
I was hoping you might go up with it.
Bee's coming with us tomorrow.
Yeah? Good for her.
Not so good for you, though.
How come?
Oh, you don't reckon she's going to let you run a book out there, do you?
What's your stake in this?
Nothing. I was just looking after your interests.
Pull the other one.
OK. I was planning on going into business with that bookkeeping, Sheila.
Gay what? What would she want with you?
You'd be surprised. But I don't want Bee fouling it up. So I thought you and me might get together and make sure she doesn't go. You know, join forces for the good of business.
Rack off, hairy legs.
Yeah, well, I know all I need to know about Talbot. Who else is there?
Well, there's Kay White. She sort of sees we've got everything we need, you know. She was real nice at first, even taking bets from Margot. There's a real mean streak in her, Bee. She tried welching on a bet once, and the other day, a roll of material went missing, and Nolene had a go at her about pinching it, you know, just stirring. Well, she went right off the handle at Nolene, and I thought she was going to kill her there for a minute.
What a pity she didn't.
Where'd you get that off then?
Out of the storeroom. Want to play?
5 to 1, I can whop you.
You're on. Anyway, no need to worry about this Kay character, unless she gets in our way. And we're not going to give her that chance. Hey, Margot, I believe you're still running your little racket at the factory.
Just keeping in practice?
Yeah, well, from now on, you can keep your practice on the inside. I'm just closing down your little bookie trade on the outside.
You can't do that.
I just did.
Hey, what about the game?
Stick it.
We'll play you. Okay, thanks.
Right, you first, then it's my go.
You've already had a go.
I was just practicing.
Okay.
Well, that's
How
not
are we going to
fair.
do it?
Oh, will you come
For
on?
starters,
Play
we've
or
got to beat
not?
Smith at her own game. Show the screw she can't be trusted.
What are you going to do about Vince, Bee? They'll all get chucked out if you get caught.
They're always having accidents in factories. He's just going to have more than most. That's all.
I think Mrs. Davidson's making a mistake.
What do you mean?
Well, she's so busy trying to impress Andrew Reynolds that she's making errors in judgment.
B. Smith.
Right. He sends Mrs. Davidson flowers and suddenly she loses her perspective.
Well, I doubt if that's the case,
Well, there's
Vera.
no other reason that...
Oh, there's no rush for those reports now, thank you.
Mrs. Davidson, both Mr. Fletcher and I think you're making a mistake letting Smith out tomorrow.
Well, I know that she's been behaving herself lately, but I thought that we'd agreed that she'd be the last one to go.
Well, I think it would do her far more good to be placed in a position of trust immediately.
She was an escapee. And after the Bryant incident, she's bound to get new ideas.
Well, security's very tight at the factory, Miss Bennett. They watch more closely there than here.
Well, that's another thing we want to talk to you about. The officers are getting tired of sitting around twiddling their thumbs at the factory.
But I thought you were worried about the possibility of escape. I'm sure you'd be the first to agree that 2 officers are needed on duty at all times. Good night.
Excuse me. I'm looking for someone. They call him the Weasel. They said he might live around here.
Who's they?
Oh, you know, they only gave me his name and all. They said to ask around.
What do you want him for?
I got a little job for him.
Tell me who they are. I might be able to help.
Doreen Anderson.
Never heard of her.
Well, maybe the Weasel has, huh? Look, it was a long time ago, you see. I think she went under another name then. Debbie something or other.
Debbie Ray.
Yeah, that's it. She said he was the best.
He is. All right, what do you want me to do?
How do I know you're the Weasel?
Do I look like a bantam rooster? On the table.
I want my passport made legal, and I want my name changed.
$500.
What?
500 COD. It'll be ready tomorrow. No Sponduli. You'll be saying goodbye to this too.
Don't worry. You'll get your money.
The search for the escapee from the Wentworth Detention Centre spread to airports, interstate bus and rail depots late this afternoon. Police made no comment as to how the woman escaped from the hospital. However, they believe her to be violent.
Oh, get off. Violence. Stupid
I
tart.
hope she found the weasel okay.
Found the what?
Oh, well, last week when we were talking about all this breaking out stuff, I told her about this guy I used to know that fixes up passports and stuff.
Is there anything else you've forgotten to tell me lately?
No, be honest. We used to just chat because we worked at the factory together, you know.
Well, at least from today I'll know what's happening in both places. And you can forget what you just told me. We don't want anyone tempted into lagging, do we?
I just about had enough of you, Smith. You're the one with the big mouth, and just because you know you're going to be at the factory doesn't mean you're going to be top dog there.
Oh, yeah, and who is? You?
Yeah, and I've been doing a pretty good job of it, too.
You get in my way just once, Burke, and you're going to have to walk backwards to see where you're going.
Smith!
Did you hear that, Mr. Fletcher? She threatened me.
Yeah, and I suppose you did nothing whatsoever to provoke it, did you, Burke? But any more of that, Smith, and Mrs. Davidson won't think twice about withdrawing her permission for you to work. Now, you've got 10 minutes to the bell. It might be wiser if you turned in now, Burke.
You better get it right. 1 second out and you'll blow it.
I sweat. I'll do a real good job.
I can get too carried away.
Gee, that was close.
Yeah. Too close.
Would you mind if we walked for a while?
No, of course not.
I had decided not to see you again.
What made you change your mind?
I wanted to explain that I would prefer our association to remain a business one.
I see. Because I'm married.
Partly. Michael and I were separated years before we obtained a divorce. In that time, I worked hard to get where I am. It's very important to me.
Yes.
I don't want anything to jeopardize my position.
I'm not doing that, surely.
No, but certain situations could affect my work.
Are you sure that's not just a safety precaution? An excuse not to get too involved? It's always easy to tell yourself you're not going to get involved when there's a position in the background.
Or a wife.
The only thing Julie and I have shared for years is the same roof. We haven't communicated since the kids left home. Well, it happened long before that, to be honest. But then work took over for me. Nobody's fault. It just happened. I've not had the time nor the inclination to reassess the situation. Until now. I'm not making any promises, Erica, but I don't want our relationship to be just a business association. Yeah. I want to get to know you, to be with you. If anything should develop, what's the harm in it? I don't see why we should deny ourselves something that feels right because of your home situation or mine. And I don't want to run or hide from something that I haven't felt in years.
Neither do I.
Tomorrow will be the first time in ages I've been outside the gate.
Yeah, it'd be a bit different to when you're on the run, though, eh?
Notice how everything smells nicer out there?
Yeah, it must be what they call fresh air.
Excuse me, Mr. Fletcher. I can't seem to get the lid off this. Could you give me a hand?
B, do you reckon Kevin will really hate me when he finds out what I've done?
Look, he's not going to find out anything. But Vince Talbot sure as hell is.
I warned behind you, Smith.
Oh, now, come on, Fletcher. I never laid a finger on her.
She fell over all by herself, Mr. Fletcher.
Burke?
I didn't see who hit me, Mr. Fletcher. They must have hit me from behind.
I'd say you've really done it this time, Smith.
Hi. Hi. Here's the roster if you want to have a look at it.
Fine.
You and Knox will be on duty in the factory today.
Good.
Well, you're so interested in rehabilitation, this should be right up your alley.
See, I'm standing in for you.
It's about time you took a turn.
Vera, are we going to be at loggerheads from now on? Or can we at least try and act like adults?
It's obvious every time I talk to you, you end up throwing things back in my face.
I didn't set out to hurt you, Vera, for heaven's sake.
Well, you should have thought of that before comparing me to some sort of criminal.
Do you know what's wrong with you? Do you really want to know? You're so insecure because of what your mother did to you, you can't cope with the rest of the world. That's why you work in a prison. It makes you feel better than everyone else, because you haven't got much competition. It makes you feel important. You can order everybody about because you know they can't argue back. Well, let me tell you something about myself that'll add to your sense of superiority. I was born in prison. My mother was a criminal. One of the animals. So if you want to look down at me, Vera, you go right ahead. But it doesn't bother me in the slightest. Because I feel sorry for you. Really sorry.
Good morning, Meg. Vera. Have I interrupted anything?
No.
It seems you and Mr. Fletcher were right about Smith, Vera. Have you read his report?
Yes.
Do you really think she'd be that stupid?
They're both as bad as each other. Burke's a born liar. Bea mightn't have hit her, but she could easily have got someone else to do it for her.
Are you all right, Vera?
Of course I am. I've chosen someone else to replace Smith. Do you want to approve it?
I'm sure I'd agree with your choice. Well, I'll leave you to it.
Well, she's certainly changed her tune since yesterday. The flowers from Mr. Reynolds must have made a difference. Meg, I won't breathe a word of this to anyone, and I'll never bring it up with you again. I could well imagine how hideous it must have been for you.
The only hideous thing was that I didn't have the chance to get to know her.
Come in.
Excuse me, Mr. Reynolds. Vince said you wanted to see me?
Oh, yes, Kay. I want you to start organizing a stock take.
But it's not due for another 2 months.
Yes, I know, but I need an interim report. I need to know the company's position as far as assets go.
There's nothing wrong, is there?
Not if I can convince the bank manager to extend our loan for a while. Oh, by the way, Kay, there's a new girl coming with the prisoners today. Would you show her the ropes?
Yes, of course.
How are you getting on with them?
We get along.
Good. I don't want anything happening to this program. We need those women now more than ever.
That's very good. You picked that up quickly. I don't have to go to the storeroom with that Talbot bloke, do I? No, what? Oh, nothing.
Number 7 on the 3rd.
About time you got the message about no credit. When's the rest coming?
Is everything all right?
Yes, fine. We're in the middle of a stock take, so I'll be popping in and out all day. I have to list the amount of output, materials on hand, and so on.
Stupid flaming machine. Give us a hand, will you, sweetie? You're lucky to still be around. Well, I reckon if they started doing a stock take, they'd find there were a few things short by my reckoning. Hope when they start asking the questions, you got all the right answers ready.
I could report you for deliberately tampering with factory property.
But you won't.
I wouldn't bet on that.
You and me should team up.
That'll be the day.
Go on, a bookkeeper like you could cover her tracks real easy. For a few days, even weeks. We could clean up.
You must be out of your mind.
You got till this afternoon to think about it. Otherwise, I might have to start letting a few cats out of a few bags, like missing bolts of fabric.
And just who's going to believe you?
Well, they'd sure as hell check it out. And then you might find yourself working in here with us.
Well. Looks as though you didn't use the right approach, eh?
Times are hard.
Yeah, well, I'm sure your friends will be able to help raise the bail money.
Give us a break, will you? I've been on my feet all morning. As I said, times are hard.
Well, I might be able to let you off just this one time.
I should have guessed. Never thought I'd see the day that a lady cop would get into the act, though. That's all I got.
Right. Now, I want you to move on out of here, and I don't want you back in these parts today. You understand, or I'm going to book you. Go on, get moving.
I ought to join forces with you lot. The fringe benefits must be terrific.
And just put them over there with the others. Could you distribute these for me, please? All right, you're in.
Whatever you get, we split 50-50.
If you want to be a partner, you work for it. There's one extra bolt in there. How you get it out and how much you get for it's your own business. That's the best I can do.
Oh, yeah, I suppose I just walk out of here lugging one of these things under my arm, hoping nobody will notice, I suppose.
There may be a way out. Through there. Look, it's getting tougher for me to get this stuff out. I've already used the excuse of working back too often.
Well, if I can get it out, I've got to get word to one of my family about when and where the drop is. Can you get word to them?
All right. Write them a note. I'll deliver it for you.
You better watch it. Mrs. Jackson's getting real suspicious.
She's easier to con than old vinegar. Oh, I cut myself. Have you got anything for it, Mrs. Jackson?
There's the first aid kit inside. Sit down.
Oh, I reckon I ought to get compo for this.
You'll live.
Dear Judy, I don't know why you haven't replied to my last letter sent some weeks ago. I can only hope, if you didn't receive it, that this will find you. In case you didn't get my last letter, I had written to tell you Dad was very sick. We had hoped you could fly back in time, but unfortunately, it's too late. Dad passed away last night. Dad passed away last night. I'm sure if you'd been able to get back in time, we'd have been able to patch up a few differences. 20 years is a long time. You've probably changed. We've all changed, I guess. I'm sure that Dad would want me to tell you he's forgiven you for what happened 20 years ago. And that he wished he'd been more understanding when you needed it.
Hi, Mrs. Jackson. Pretty good for a kitchen hand, don't you reckon? So you'd found a hidden talent, Margot?
At least no one will get sick on that. Not like a cooking.
Yes, Kate.
I've been checking last week's books with stock on hand and the requisitions. There's $500 worth of fabric missing.
Are you sure?
I started off in D section because of something I overheard. I thought I'd check it out before I said anything. Look, Mr. Reynolds, I know you need those prisoners working here, but...
Well, go on.
They've been stealing from you ever since they arrived.
No, that's impossible.
I found out the time and the place for the next drop, I think they'd call it, if you want proof.